So yeah, whilst we're waiting for Carole to join us, I'll just we've just start with an opening video. This so the talk today is really about inspiring leadership. As I said, we've got a lot of different talks to come, and we've got Rastafarian heritage, we've got food and sports. We're looking at music and creative writing. As I mentioned about the great contribution from our nursing and medical services community. We've got arts and activism, so we've got delighted to have confirmed Clear Lake as well. Today we wanted to look at our leaders. Sadly, we did have we're going to be joined by Marvin, but unfortunately he's away on official business. And we're now waiting for Carole. But to talk about inspiring leaders, I'm going to just play this opening video from Roy Hackett, talk about his life and career. Recently awarded the MBE as well. Thank you, Tom.
We have a saying, you're going to be in it to change it. And that is my word, in it to change it. Try and try, never stop trying. Because trying is what I did in my life, in my whole life. I keep trying because everybody think I'm a no good. And I keep trying until I become a too good. Great Britain was not great to its Commonwealth people because we were of different color. I came and I walked along the road for about 10 doors. Every one I knocked that didn't have a card on it to say no gypsies, no dogs, no Irish, and no colored. The lady opened the door, saw me, and she didn't say a word, just slammed the door. I said to myself, I think that's the norm here. There was no rule about discrimination and what you shouldn't do. Therefore, they could do anything and get away with it. When I tried to buy my first house, there's a big crowd of white people standing out. And I thought they'd come to welcome me in their midst. No. You know what they did? They said they didn't want me there. I said, why did God make 2 color or 3 color people? Why didn't just make everybody black, everybody white, everybody pink? We wouldn't have had this trouble. I felt extremely degraded and thought, but what am I doing here? And I think I just got to put up with it until something comes along. We decided to fight anything that a black person was involved to help them out.
Whilst we can obtain white labour in this city, we intend to go on engaging white labour rather than coloured labour.
In our country ruled by Britain, we drive our buses, we drive airplanes, we drive helicopters, we drive trains. So why is it in England we can't do it?
Well, we don't want them on here. That's the main reason. There ain't going to be enough work for the whites, let alone the blacks.
They were not shifting. We said we've got to take it to the other level. We are going to form ourselves into a group and stop the buses. We physically sit down in the road. At the time, Arthur Scargill was having the miners' strike up north, and we were having the strike down here. And at one stage they said Arthur Scargill, Roy Hackett, and Tony Benn is the 3 worst person in England. In 1965, Harold Wilson stood up in Parliament.
The battle against racialism here in Britain.
And he said, as from today, any person discriminate against another because of politics, religion, color, creed, or disability, you are committed a crime, punishable, 5 months in prison, or 5,000 or both. And I cried. I said, thank heavens for this. I said we won. I never taught it in school that this happened here. And I said, why are they ashamed of what they done to us? I talked to the primary schools. I always tell them that we had to do that to bring you up, and never forget your roots. Trying is a great thing. And if you even fail one, try another time, or trying to improve what you fail on, you know, and try again. Really, because young people today, they are tomorrow's people. And we must try our best to make them be a good tomorrow's people.
The great Roy Hackett there giving his experience of growing up here in the UK. Our guest speaker is literally joining us. Carole, I've introduced you as the Deputy Lord Mayor. We're talking about inspiring leadership. Thank you for joining us today. And I just wanted you just to just walk through the kind of Windrush experience. We've just seen whilst we were beaming you through via the technology through with Roy Hackett, and just your opening questions before you start and begin. You know, in terms of your experiences with Roy and the Bristol Windrush generation and what they kind of mean to you.
Yeah, well, it's interesting actually, because it's a shame I didn't get to give you my PowerPoint, because Roy is an integral part of that as well, and I've worked lots with him. But can I just say a little bit about my background first of all? So obviously obviously I'm Carole Johnson. I'm first generation Windrush generation, and my mum and dad were both from the Caribbean, both Jamaicans, and they came here separately and met when they got here. The rest is history, really. Currently, I am the Deputy Lord Mayor for Bristol City Council. I'm also Deputy Cabinet Member for Equalities, Communities and Public Health, and Deputy Bench Chair for the Magistrates across Avon and Somerset, and Interim Chair for St Paul's Carnival, which is really important to the Windrush story here in Bristol. And also, as you're aware, Roger, I'm also was a Windrush ambassador appointed by the Home Office to support Windrush generation, who unfortunately went through the scandal, and helping them to raise awareness and get the compensation that they are due. And in addition to that, and most importantly, I am an alumni, I can never say that.
Yeah, don't get confused with Illuminati. The young people don't like it.
Very, very clear about that. I'm an ex-student of UWE, which I attended many, many times. So I'm honoured actually to be here with you today. So, you know, my Windrush generation story really starts with my parents, my mum and dad. And my mum and dad came here separately, as I said, and they both of them came here on an invite from the UK, full of hope and wonder. My mum told me that she was actually told that the roads here in the UK were paved with gold, so they thought they were coming into a very, very positive situation, full of hopes and dreams and adventure. You know, they were young people themselves, and they were coming to make a new life. My mum came here to train as a nurse, which she did start that. So they were entirely, you know, 100% positive in making their plans and arrangements to come here. And as far as they were concerned, they were coming on an amazing adventure to what they called the mother country at that time. So shall I stop there and you can ask me some questions? I just thought it was important to lay the background to who I am, you know, and how I'm part of this journey and this story.
Sure. We've now I've given Tom the opportunity now to. I think he's loaded some of your PowerPoint. Thanks, Tom. I should ask that also add my thanks to Mia Ning and Alicia Airy as well as my co-leads on this project. And thanks for getting all this, as we see the vagaries of technology, but we are there and up and running. So I think is that right, Tom? The PowerPoint is up. Is that what I can see on the screen?
This is what I've just been sent. It's a 15-slide PowerPoint, I think, but it looks a bit like a book to me. But I don't know what.
Oh no, that's not mine. No, mine's got 23 slides on it.
Okay, we'll take this one down.
See what you're putting there either. So mine actually says Windrush Generation. Shall I take some questions whilst?
Yeah, that's probably for the best.
Roger, shall I take some questions?
Yeah, sure.
I'm not sure if others have questions, or shall I just share?
I will just carry on. I've just gone through I've got the same 15, which is more of a booklet. So yeah, if you want to just talk about your story and how it begins in terms of the Windrush generation, just touch upon your parents.
Yeah. So both my parents were very young people. My mum was, I think, 18. My dad was in his early 20s when he came here, full of hope and wonder, and looking forward to a great life, to build a life. Like many of our, some of the people that here in Bristol, like Roy Hackett, like Barbara Detrin, like Dolores Campbell, Owen Henry, Carmen Beckford, Paul Stevenson, Clifford Drummond, and Audley Evans, who we affectionately know as the Saints, the Seven Saints in St. Paul's. They were great. They were and they are great contributors to the community here in Bristol, and they are all from the Windrush generation. And what I'd like to say that Roy Hackett is still with us, and so is Barbara Detrin. The others have passed, and Paul Stevenson, and the others have passed on. And I think that's a very important point to make. I myself have lost both my parents now, and so now, I believe we're into a new chapter of legacy. It's important for us to remember the journey, the story behind how we came here, and the experience, the real life lived experience of the Windrush generation. And that term is a very new term as well, isn't it? It's only been coined in the last couple of years. They were just young people looking to make a life for themselves and a better life for their children, of which I am one, and you are also one, I believe, Roger, as well. And the real reason I wanted to sort of lay out my titles, as it were, at the beginning was not to show off or anything like that, but I believe that those things are some of the reasons why our parents came here, so that we could achieve, so that we could progress. And in fact, to be honest, I think they believed that it would have been a generation earlier. But as you know, the environment that they came here to was not the positive environment they thought they were coming into, and it was very, very hostile because of the racist attitudes and the discrimination that was waiting here for them, as opposed to the warm embrace which they thought they were going to be embraced, and they just weren't. So shall I pause for a bit or shall I continue? You tell me how you'd like to do this.
I would just continue for a little while and because we're just into the story. It's great.
Yeah, okay. So the Windrush issue came to prominence in 2018, and it affected long-term residents who could not prove their legal or lawful rights, because although we know that that journey began over 50 years ago now, what we didn't know at the time was that documentation, the correct documentation, wasn't being kept or stored or recorded in the way that it should have. And so we now find ourselves in a very difficult situation where lots of people who came here completely legally are having to prove their legal status, and it's made life very difficult for people now, 50 years later. You know, some people have been suffering for a couple of decades now because they haven't been able to work or you know, have access to funds or benefits or anything like that. And unfortunately, some people who have actually returned to the Caribbean haven't been allowed back in. So this is why it's become widely known as the Windrush scandal, because you know, they actually did come here as legal invitees into the UK. Not only did they have a frosty reception, they had to deal with a lot of racism and discrimination, and then their documentation was lost, and they were the ones that were left accountable, when actually it should have been the government who was held accountable. And you may have heard about the Windrush scheme, and that's what that is all about. So what they're trying to do now is raise awareness that anyone in that position, and if you know anyone, you know, I will leave contact details at the end, because there are some people who are literally owed thousands of pounds for the suffering that they have been through. And as far as I'm concerned, it's the right of theirs to have, and they should be compensated for that. One of the things I did want to, we all talk about the Empire Windrush, which carried 492 people across from Jamaica and arrived in Tilbury Dock on the 22nd of June in 1948. And we often see the picture of that beautiful Empire Windrush ship, which we also have a mural of in St Paul's on Campbell Street. And it's, you know, really paints a picture of journey, and for me that journey is not, it's not over. We're still on the journey. The Windrush generation came here over 50 years ago, but the journey continues in so many different ways, politically, emotionally, psychologically, as a community. You know, we are still on an important journey, and you know, for me as a parent now, it's as important as it was back then, because we are, as I said, talking about legacy. My parents aren't here now, but it's for me now to fight for all the hopes and dreams and aspirations that they came here to achieve. It's up to me and you to ensure that our children receive all that they're entitled to. And I'm going to pick up with Roy Hackett, because Roy Hackett is a key member of the community here in Bristol, as I said, and he was actually one of the founding members of the St Paul's Carnival. And when I spoke to Roy about, you know, why or how that happened, I was really intrigued, because he explained to me that, and I hope you get the chance to invite him in, because he explained to me that when they came here, when they got the frosty reception, and they felt really misunderstood, and you know, they were really missing home as well. And a key thing that he said to me that always sticks in my mind was, he said that they just wanted to bring a little sunshine to the streets of the UK. And, you know, through that simple desire, they created a community group where they wanted to share all the positivity of their descendancy, their culture, their ethnicity, which was being rejected at the time. But he said that they just wanted to show, you know, we want to be friends, we want to get on with you. And so they started what was the St. Paul's Festival at that time, you know, so they could share their food and their music. And I'm so sorry that my PowerPoint's not on, because I actually wanted to play music in the background whilst I was speaking, because I feel that just like they did, that music, Caribbean music, soca, calypso, whatever you like, it's such a strong part of our heritage. And it's a natural, for me, it would be a natural thing. And not being able to be in the room with you physically, I really felt something about the atmosphere that they brought. And I certainly remember my mother was the youngest of 8 children. 4 of them came to the UK, 3 went to the USA, and 1 stayed in Jamaica. And so it was really, really important to keep their community spirit, that's it, their community spirit going. And I certainly can remember it was an absolute delight when my uncles came round or came into town, because they came with the music, they came with their fun, they came with their lingo. And, you know, and I'm grateful because I have that in my roots and in my descendancy now. And, you know, it sustains me. Identity is important. We know how important identity is. So I completely, it's one of the reasons why I got involved with St. Paul's Carnival as well, because I wanted to be part of that legacy and making sure that our future generations have the opportunity, the opportunities that our parents came here to give us, and that we were continuing to share in that positive manner that the founders began that particular journey about as well. So it's really, really important, and I still believe that, and I believe it will continue to hold the same importance as we keep recognizing and honoring our descendancy, our culture, and our ethnicity. Yeah.
So in terms of your career, Carole, how has that kind of been a beacon and for leadership for you? I mean, you've gone on to do great things. We'd be delighted to see you Lord Mayor in a few years, following some great footsteps in the community. We mentioned clearly earlier, and the old landlord from that I can remember from the Prince of Wales, Big Jim, many years ago. So how does that, taking that mantle forward from those greats that you mentioned the Seven Saints? We're going to play that video with Tangham shortly. But how has that inspired your leadership?
Oh, well, I don't know if inspiration is the right word. I mean, because it's a mainstay. It's not, you know, I wouldn't perhaps be sat here having this conversation with you if it had not been for those individuals. I'm very, very aware that I stand on some very strong shoulders. I was going to say soldiers, but it is soldiers and it is also shoulders as well. And you know, it's very often we've seen that our history has been erased. It's been lost, it's been not acknowledged, and it's so important that we remember all of those individuals who stood when it was so hard to stand. We all know how difficult it is to stand now, today. It was far more difficult back in in the day, and they still did it. And you know, I so admire what they were able to do in such adversity. And you know, to use the word inspiration, actually they inspire me to push myself further, because they, you know, if they could achieve what they did in those circumstances, I feel that it's important that we use the opportunities that they made all those sacrifices for, that we also do the same as they have and reach back and help others to come through as well. And more importantly, that we remember all the achievements and the fights that they've gone through, and all their achievements as well, because if we don't celebrate them, no one else is going to. It's for us, that's on our watch. We must make sure that they are not forgotten, and that their fight is recognised, and that it's respected, and that it's honoured, and that it becomes a foundational stone for us to springboard on, and then use whatever we achieve to help our own children to go even further again.
Do you mean that about inspiring? That's inspiring in itself. Foundational stones to go on and make that kind of future achievements. I mean, what couldn't be more inspiring than that? That was fantastic summary. So please, we ask you to come forward and give testament to our legends and greats. So thank you, Carole. We're going to throw it open to you, the audience. Be great to have some questions from yourselves now. Any further questions for Carole? I've got a few more up my sleeve, but I'll just take the mic. As any more any things of interest in terms of Carole's career, her leadership, her future leadership, and how she sees things, matters of community, of class, of race, and what she perceives. Please open up your mic and ask a question, or tap in the chat and I'll ask it for you. And I've got a question here. Who inspires you as a leader?
Who inspires me as a leader? This is really interesting, because do you know what? I have a real sort of global view. I mean, the world's becoming global anyway. And I do look to the greats like Obama. I was in a conversation the other day, and Michelle, I was in a conversation the other day with a non-BME person, and we were talking about Obama, and then he stopped me in my tracks and he said, you just said our president. And I was like, oh, did I? And he said, yeah, you said our president. And his query was, because obviously I'm not American, I live in the UK, but I view him as our president. I lay claims to him. And I really feel, you know, people like Marvin as well, you know, making such amazing breakthrough, not only into the position, but whilst in position. Our administration is the most diverse we've ever seen in Bristol City Council. It is one of the most progressive city councils in the nation at the moment. I said at the beginning that one of my roles is I'm Deputy Cabinet Member for Equalities, Communities and Public Health. And just last week, we were on a call with Downing Street. They actually called us, Asha Craig and myself, into a meeting to discuss how we're doing, what we're doing in Bristol. You know, they're wanting to learn from what's happening here. And, you know, it's really important to realise things like that, because when you're fighting so hard, it feels like such a battle sometimes that you lose sight of the progress that you are making, and the impression that you are making. So, you know, that I do tend to look to the top of the tree, because I believe that you have to shoot for the stars. You know, shoot for the stars, do as much as you can whilst you can. Some of these things are seasonal. I may not hold these titles forever, but whilst I'm holding them, I'm going to do as much as I can, as for as many people as I can, whilst I'm in position to pass the baton on to the next lot of people, so that they have got foundational stones that are even bigger to springboard from.
Okay, well, that's great, and I'm glad you had the clarification there of which Obama, because I thought you might have to bring in Michelle as well. Anybody else got any further questions as well? I've got one for you whilst we wait some more. Who was your inspiring leaders when you were growing up?
Oh, it's really hard, because when we were growing up, we didn't have the information circulated in the way that we do now. And I can remember asking my mom, you know, well, what did black people do? Because we didn't have it in our school, we weren't being taught anything like that. And it was all very non-BME history, etc. But I tell you what, as you were talking, asking the question, the person that really came to my mind, and some of the people on this call may know him, was Mr. Stewart, who's passed on now. He's a Bristol community activist. And, you know, he's done so much for so many different community things. He's passed away now, and I wish he was here to see all that was going on, but he just missed seeing, you know, the best of it. And the reason why, because people like him, you know, held down a job. He worked for the buses as well. It was so difficult. He still did it. Held down a job, took care of his family, and fought for the community and our rights at the same time. And I think, you know, that is so admirable. And that was without a title, didn't have a title, didn't have any of that, but he did work, he did the groundwork. And those are the people that are real, you know, link pins in the community. And I really, really do respect him. And he was a role model for me, and somebody that I could reach out to. So, you know, sometimes we talk about the Obamas and, you know, of the world, but we don't know them personally, when we're sometimes surrounded by local heroes that we can actually reach out and touch. And it's really important that we see and understand them too.
Okay, questions are coming in thick and fast now. Thank you very much. We're going to go to Mandy now, and she said, if you could transport you forward 20 years and you could look back to changes, what would you hope to see?
If I could look back or forward?
If you would go forward 20 years and then look back.
Oh, I see.
What changes would you hope to see?
Right. Well, I'd like to see more black women in the top positions. I'd like to see, working in the council, I would like to see a far more representative bench. At the moment, we have, out of 70 councillors, we have 6 of them are from BME backgrounds. 5 of them are in the Labour Oh, there's 7. So there's 5 in the Labour, 1 in Green and 1 Liberal Democrat. Out of 70, that's not enough, and certainly does not reflect the communities that we're serving. So I'd like to see far more diversity in the local government. And I'd also like to see a much stronger presence of Black history in schools. So I think that's going to make a huge difference to our understanding moving forward. And I would like to see young Black people being respected in the way that they should be, without having to fight so hard just to be.
Some great answers there. Questions coming in thick and fast now. I'm going to go to Matt Hallows next. If budget and logistics were not an issue, what would your dream project be?
Ooh. If budget and logistics weren't an issue, what would my dream? Oh, do you know what? Yeah. It would be, this is not necessarily a BME thing, just make that clear, but I'd like to see something set up that was positive and proactive for sufferers of domestic abuse. And I have a different approach to some people, because I would like to see equal budget going for victims as for perpetrator programs, because I don't believe there's much point in just supporting victims if you're not doing anything about the perpetrator programs. But that takes you into this criminal justice system as well, which needs a lot of reform, and it needs to be addressing its diversity as well, which, you know, we have been doing with the magistrates program, and we'll continue to do that, and we'll continue to encourage other sections of the criminal justice system to take a similar approach to improve their diversity.
Right, there's a lot there, and let me just dig into a couple of those. Again, there are quite a few questions. Really encouraged by the amount of questions. I will come to them in turn. There's a few things there that I just wanted to kind of tease out for our attendees today, and thank everybody for giving up their time. You said about kind of perpetrators, but you're kind of getting to the realms of restorative justice, and obviously you are a magistrate as well. Can you just give us a little bit of detail about what that means for those unfamiliar with that whole you know, why we should be looking after offenders as well?
Oh, well, yeah, absolutely. I mean, it goes across the board, whatever the offence, but in something like domestic abuse, you know, if you're looking at the cycles of offending, obviously it's important that we support victims of any crimes, that's obvious, but what is not spoken about quite so much, or in the same way, not with the same weight at the moment, I'd like to see that change, is that we are looking at perpetrator programs, meaning the offenders, we're looking at their behaviours and we're addressing that as well, because unless you're addressing the offender's behaviour, you are always going to be having more and more victims. They will just go on to victimise someone else. So whilst you're taking care of the victim, which is the right thing, absolutely, not putting that down at all, but unfortunately, whilst you're taking care of that victim number one, if you're not sorting out the perpetrator, they will go on to create a victim number 2 and 3 and 4 and 5. Whereas if we had more funding going into dealing with the offenders, then we could readdress the and perhaps save a few people from becoming victims as well.
Okay, I'm gonna keep you in the time capsule. Thank you for getting in some depth. And again, so we're talking real changes in public policy and real changes in behaviour in terms of dealing with kind of behaviour change, as opposed to like the way you frame that in terms of victims 2 and 3 to kind of stop that at the first one. So back into the time machine you go, and from Dolores, I'm going to ask to speak a little later. And again, we're delighted to have her on the 24th of March, looking at nursing and her medical career. Stay tuned for that. But she's asking, looking back, did you see yourself in the position that you are in now?
No, absolutely not. And to encourage anybody who's struggling at university at the moment, the first time, I'm older than I look, and the first time I even stepped over the threshold of a university grounds, I was 32 years old. And from that point, you know, I was delighted to do my certificate in counselling, which then led on to a diploma in social work, which then led to my top-up BSc honours and community studies and social work, onto my master's, onto my PhD. I believe that, do you know, I really believe in you having a go, because if someone had told me, oh, one day you'll be sat and you'll have this list of qualifications and you will be holding these different posts, I would have laughed until I fell on the floor. I would just not have believed it. But there's a lot to be said for sheer determination and hard work. And I would describe myself as a grafter. I'm not afraid of hard work. And I do believe that that in the end does outshine even natural academic ability. It's like the story of the hare and the tortoise. You know, it's the tortoise that actually gets over the finish line. And I know a lot of very talented and gifted people who just, you know, they don't have to try too hard to pass any exam. And I know a lot of people now who have had to stay up and burn the midnight oil, and more often than not, it's the ones who just keep on keeping on, who are willing to work hard, who get to places that even they could never have dreamt of. So if you're struggling at the moment, I would like to encourage you and just to say, there actually is nothing special about me apart from being willing to work. And if you're willing to work and you become your own competition, don't compete with anybody else. Don't pay attention to that. Just compete with yourself and make sure that you're making progress every time. You're improving on your own performance, not competing with anybody else's, and you will get there.
Another inspiring answer. Thank you so much, and thanks for the question. A couple of interesting comments. You know, it's taken to 32. It took me. I was a late bloomer, and I think that happens a lot in our community. We'll talk about that a little bit more when I get our second speaker up more for our conversation with Emmanuel, because that was one of the things that we've discussed along with Alicia and Mandy about community learning, and how we think there are lots of masters and degree students and even doctorates, and just from there waiting to be asked to come on board and give their knowledge or learn more, which is what today is about. So some great words there. We're going to go to our next question. We've got a couple more, and then I'm going to close and thank you. But they are coming in thick and fast. What advice is the next one would you give to young people who are facing racism in their daily lives? That's from Mian.
Yeah. Be strong, be strong. and stick together. As a community, we have to change our mindset a little bit and become even more united. Stand together, because there is strength in standing together, and believing in yourself, and supporting other BME people to believe in themselves as well. I really believe what I've just said to you, and I was reflecting also when I was at school at 16 years old. I was sent to see the careers advice officer, and the careers advice was unbelievable what she said to me. She actually said to me, what is the difference between you having a baby at 16 or having one at 18? I did not go into that room to discuss anything about any baby or nothing like that. And that was the future she saw for me, nothing else. No discussion about any career or anything like that. And I'm bringing that up. I mean, that really happened to me, and I'm bringing it up because sometimes you have to zone out those voices, and this is where I'm saying, if you stick together and support one another, it gets a little bit easier. But please believe in you and do you. Yeah.
Excellent again. So we've got our two last questions, and I want to relevant to the project, really, from Sophie O'Brien. Thank you for this question, because the project is really to inspire, as well as inspiring leaders today, as we're going through, is for a piece of, whether to help our students, our University of West of England Bristol students, or other students tuning in terms of using an aspect in their work they're doing when they're our historian students, hopefully our medical students, hopefully our artistic students are already doing. So the question really is great, and talk to that before we close with the final question. And the question is, what kind of work would you like to see the younger generation, for example, the grandchildren of the Windrush generation, creating?
Creating?
Yes.
That's an excellent question. That is absolutely fantastic question, because do you know what? I don't know who asked it, but that is somebody that is thinking outside of the box. And I think that's exactly the way to go. An issue with the past generation, for the past generations, is that other communities wanted us to fit in a box that we don't fit in. And we're a different community, we do things differently, we like things a different way, and there's nothing wrong with being different. And so I'm not even going to attempt to say what that job or those jobs should look like. What I am saying is rip the box up and create your own shape, and do that. Because do you know what I'd like to see? Things that we haven't seen yet, because there's a lot of excellence in our community, and we have not been allowed to have that creativity, and we have not been allowed to express all of who we are, and it's time. So I don't know what that would exactly look like, because I've been impacted by the boxes that people have tried to put me in. But I would pray that the future generations will just create their own shapes and come up with the most creative things and go for it. Do you?
All right, great.
That question.
Yeah, I'm not. Oh, that was I'm going to say from Sophie O'Brien. So hopefully she's inspired by that. I'm going to tack one on the end of that. What obviously you're in your various capacities and your leadership roles, as well as being a community member. What's inspiring you that the current generation are producing in terms of their activism, in terms of their art? What's inspiring you? As well, so you because you mentioned about reaching. It's not just reaching upwards in terms of to our elder generation, but it's also reaching to our younger generation. Your words were reaching down. So I'd like to know what's inspiring you by them.
I'll tell you what is inspiring me about them is their attitude. I love it. They are not bound by the restrictions that we felt bound by, and they are. When the statue was pulled down, I was watching that from home. I wasn't down there myself, and I will never forget it, as many of us won't, because what I saw was the most powerful thing. I saw people from every background walking together in opposition to the offence. And I found that to be one of the most powerful things to see, because racism is not black versus white. It shouldn't be. It should be black and white together versus racism. When we stand together like that, the power, the energy, the positivity, it's unbeatable. That type of unity, I mean, it's been rare for our generation to see that. And yet the generations coming up behind us are insisting that's how it is. And that inspires me immensely. I feel proud that they've reached a place where they can say no together. That's the right thing.
That's a great point. And yeah, I was listening to a podcast recently about Generation X and Generation Z, and they've got no boundaries. They don't have to. You and I, Carole, would have had to wait for permission or sneak out, as my sisters used to, down out the windows to get to the nightclubs and stuff. Now they just upload and talking and chatting as regularly. And I agree and share that fearlessness. I'm going to come to your final question before I ask us all to give a great round of applause for our first speaker. And feel free to stay on with us. But it's the closing, and it's a great question from Ellie Bliss, who says, "What's been your proudest moment in your career so far?"
Oh. The proud. Do you know what? I think this might surprise you, but I think the proudest moment of my career was the very first time that I graduated at UWE, because nobody in my family had ever gone to university before, and everyone on this call knows university is not easy. So the first time that I had breakthrough like that, it felt like it wasn't just for me, it was from all my family, from my parents who'd come here to achieve great things and had been blocked and stopped and hindered and abused and discriminated. It felt like I had just made some kind of breakthrough for all of us. It was me standing on in the cathedral, but it felt like a very important moment for my entire family and beyond. So even though I've gone on to do other things since then, that was a very significant and important moment for us all. Yeah, I think so.
Fantastic. You said your first one. That means you liked it so much you're coming back again. Is that true?
And again, and again, and again. Yeah, you'll see from my record. Yeah, they couldn't get rid of me once I got there. They couldn't get rid of me. Yeah. But I just want to say the importance of highlight the importance of what we do. And I'm going to go back to Roy Hackett again, because those simple actions, positive actions, 50 odd years ago, Barbara Detron told me that the very first St. Paul's Carnival, there were about 100 people there. At the last carnival, there were over 100,000 people come to celebrate our culture. Never underestimate the power of small beginnings and what impact that may have in the future. So do the best that you can do at all times, because you never know that your action today may be something that somebody else is talking about in 50 years time from now as well.
What a great way an end to close. That was fantastic for our inaugural community address. Thank you, Deputy Lord Mayor and Councillor, Magistrate, and of course, University West of England, Bristol alumni. Carole Johnson, a round of applause, please, everybody, and thank you, and wave your hands in that basis. Thank you so much, Carole, and thanks for your patience and understanding as we get this one launched. Thanks so much there in the chats. Lots of thank yous from me, and thanks for such inspiring answers, and your strong role model for many Black, Asian, and minority ethnic women. Lots of thanks and loves in the chat as well. So we are going to go forward. Thank you, Carole. Please stay on now, because I want to talk a little bit more about some of that leadership within the community. Going to play. We played Roy's first video, and I think it's a good time to have another one, and then Dr. Emmanuel Oduki and I are going to talk. I'm going to have a few contributions from Andalorius as well, just in terms of the just previewing a talk she's going to give in 1 month's time as one of our speakers. But we're going to another inspiring leader who's found a connection. It doesn't mean that you have to be of Caribbean descent, but far from it. We, as Carole has said, as I say, we think about Carnival, how much we just open our doors and share our community. But we do want to share, celebrate. We also want to commemorate that. And here is another one of our inspiring leaders, the MP for Bristol West, Fangan Debonair, and she goes into the depth of the Seven Saints of St. Paul's. Thank you, Tom.
So it's Black History Month, and my name's Fangan Debonair. I'm the Member of Parliament for Bristol West, and I'm the first MP of Bristol West to be from Black, Asian or other ethnic minority community. So I'm choosing to spend Black History Month day to day by going around all the 7 saints of St. Paul's. There's 7 murals of 7 key figures in St. Paul's. This is the first one. This is Audley Evans. And Audley was a really key figure in the Bristol bus boycott and also helped to set up St. Paul's Carnival. There's loads more about him, so I'm going to post on here a link to the app with more information. So this was exciting. This is Owen Henry, and amongst many other things, like being part of the Bristol bus boycott, Owen Henry started the first Black-led housing association, United, which is now called United Communities, which I did not know, and I actually have quite a lot to do with United Communities Housing Association. So this is a real connection for me, of someone who campaigned on housing as well as equal rights generally. Owen Henry. So, this is Dolores. This is Dolores Campbell. She was originally a nurse, but as you can possibly guess from the picture, she was also a foster carer, loved by many. And here she is. I don't think it's an accident that the paintworks, Michelle Curtis and the paintworks, puts Dolores on Campbell Street, which is where we are in St Paul's. This is one of my favourites because it's just full of joy, and you get a real sense of what a great foster parent Dolores must have been. As well as loads of other things. With all of these seven saints, there's a long list of their accomplishments. So this one's really, it's got a topical note to it. Because Carole Beckford was the first black woman in the Southwest to get an MBE in the early 80s, I think 1982, something like that. And we're going to meet up with Roy shortly, Roy Hackett, who's also just got an MBE for his services to the community. So it feels like a nice connection because he's the last mural that probably was for today. And Colin was also a nurse, had a midwife, but also, I didn't know this one today, was Bristol's first ever race relations officer. So you just think how many young people whose lives would have been changed by her because of the work that she did. So this is Clifford Drummond, and I've just learned. I mean, Clifford was involved in so many things. He was a businessman. He set up a travel agency helping people to visit their family members back home in their former countries of origin. I felt quite emotional about that, actually. I'm the daughter of an immigrant, and my dad had to wait a long time before he saw his parents again. It was a big deal. Travel was expensive in the 70s and 80s, and Clifford, by setting up the travel agency, helped people to see their families again, which is amazing. But also, as an advisor, as an advice worker, he helped people, such as possibly some of the people in this picture, it's a really diverse group, help people when they first got to this country. So people of Asian origin, of Caribbean origin, with their legal papers. And also he was a big part of a big case against a company whose workers have got asbestosis, who's got lungs with asbestos. She's one of the two that are still alive, and we're about to go and meet the other one. Barbara was a social worker, and as you can, well, I think maybe you can tell from some of what's written up here, that she says, I saw a group of black people doing something for themselves and I want to be part of that. Barbara is a big part of community life, and Barbara's been really active in the elder support at the Malcolm X Centre, but so many other things. And just, there's another one of the things I love about this is Michelle Curtis and the Paintsmiths have made each and every one so special and so very beautiful. So this is Barbara, and we're going to go now and meet Roy. I'm here with Roy Hackett. I mean, I'm a bit overawed because Roy is a friend and neighbour of mine, but also a big hero of so many people. And this year, Roy got an honour, which I think is long overdue, actually, Roy. So tell me a bit about it. You got the MBE.
Yes.
What does that mean? What did you get it for? Do you want to say? I mean, I think the list is so long. What would you say it for?
Can you remember?
You can't remember. This man, so he's number 7 on our murals list because of the Bristol bus boycott. So then how did the boycott come about?
Pardon?
What happened next? Where did the boycott come from? Whose idea was that?
Well, matter of fact, I don't know who boycott, but I'm going to tell you what I told the people who pulled the boycott.
Yeah.
I went and said, a guy crying. And I said, why are you crying? And he showed me the form. He said, I get the form, you know, to say to come and join and get an interview so that they can train me to be a driver. I can get the van and go. I said, yeah, that's the rule. Yeah. You break it? Yeah. No, they said they didn't want that. That's it. All is on. Didn't you? Go on. And we're going up to the bus station, and I said, who's in charge here? And they said, I said, can you get her for me?
Yeah.
Get her. When she came, I said, well, my friend here did a job. He was my company. Yeah. My friend did that. He said, well, I told him, told him, he said he didn't come here. But I know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I said, well, tell him again then.
Yeah.
He said, we're not. We're going to do that. I said, what about me? He said, what about you? I said, I'm not white. When you interview me?
Yeah.
He said, I look for you. He said, when you do the job,
yeah.
this is the same person going to make you lose it. Because there's nothing here in their about, and nothing here said they want white, pink, Chinese. He said, who are you? I said, lady, when you lose the job, you have to my name. And she went inside. I don't know if she phone. And she come back out and he said, young man, I'm going to try this one. I said, thank you very much. That's all you have to say. I'll try.
Yeah.
You might fail in the interview.
Yeah.
And your job is safe. But if he don't fail and he don't get the job, your job is not safe. But I was a activist ever since I was tiny.
Yeah.
I don't know why. Long before coming, I said to her when I was 24. And she said, can you let me have it now? I said, and don't forget, you must come out and say when you start. He said, what about if you don't get to the interview? I said, then I taught him, and he never failed one.
Good for you. So one last thing, Roy. What would you say to the activists of today, the young people like you were then? What would you say to the young activists today?
I would say, don't be vicious to them. Talk to them kindly, as if they're human.
Yeah.
And talk to them with manners.
Yeah.
But one thing you must tell them, if you acted wrong with me, then you have no job.
Yeah.
We're going to ask you, who are you?
Yeah.
You say, after you lost your job, you come and ask you. I said, that's what I use.
And that was taken from Black History Month, just talking about inspiring leaders. We have two there, two for the price of one. We heard about Roy Hackett, of course, but our MP Tangam, in terms of her career as well. So great that she's inspired as well. As I say, age has no barriers on this story, a story across the Atlantic, across continents. And on that note, I'm going to ask kind of two people step forward. First of all, someone who came, who she insists on saying, but is part of the Windrush story as far as we are concerned, but came late to the party, or that was the UK, came as a nurse from Trinidad. She will be speaking later, but I'd just like to reflect on today, Andalores. If you can put your mic up for your comments in terms of leadership, because you were one of the first sisters on the ward. It would have been a tough place to come to. I don't know what you were told in terms of I know our parents were told the streets were paved with gold. By that time, you came a bit later. In your career, so you would have had a little of inkling of what it was like in Britain. Just want to just reflect on some of your comments from what it was like arriving there, and then obviously now in terms of going from both a leader on the ward to going into being a leader in administration, and now a leader in our community with our Bristol Black carers, caring from our elders that we've spoken about at length. And Dolores, your response, please.
Hi, Roger. Thank you. I came in 1999 without any expectations because I didn't have any connections with the UK, and I knew no one knew anyone in Bristol. So I just came to have a different experience and learn different skills. And to my surprise, I found what I wasn't looking for, and that was not being treated as a person, but being treated because of your color. And that was a shock for my system, a really big shock. in terms of that, and not seeing as many Black people, for want of a better word, in leadership roles, because I came from a country where 90% of the people are Black, who are the leaders of different organizations, who are my role models in nursing. And it was a total shock. Yes, I know I was coming to a country that was Britain and would have that, but I didn't expect it to have so little.
When you say so little, what do you mean by so little? What do you, because the infrastructure was there. And you're coming from Trinidad. For those people that don't know, sorry, we are in a part of that Caribbean part where people came from in terms of that Windrush generation. So it would have been a so-called British colony, and certainly part of the what was the old empire, and now we know as Commonwealth. Apart from that, wealth wasn't common out there. So what were your expectations when you arrived and thinking of the so-called mother country?
When I came, I expected somewhat to have a reflection of some of the other Caribbean islands, being a sister on the ward, being, what was I shouldn't have to be, I had to search. And when I transferred from one hospital to another, and there was a survey conducted, there were only 7 Black senior nurses in a hospital that had 4 different departments, 4 different hospitals within Bristol. So that was shocking for me.
I mean, it's shocking to me too, but for those who don't have the same lived experience as we do, why was that shocking to you?
Because where I came from Trinidad, and all my sisters were Black. All my leaders were Black leaders. So I didn't even think that I wouldn't find any here. So that is what was a shock for me. I didn't even think that did not exist here.
So how did you adjust to that?
Sorry?
How did you physically and mentally adjust to that shock? It must have been like being thrown into cold water and coming from Trinidad with the occasional holiday in Tobago across the water. That must have been quite a shock.
It was, because I had to negotiate to get my 3 weeks holiday all in one in order to go back to Trinidad. And I understand the culture here is everybody take a week here and a week there just to fly, to some European country and come back. And I had to fight my case. I'm not going 2 hours away. I'm going 8 hours away. So I needed my time. Exactly. I did that 3 weeks to go. And they said, well, the policy doesn't allow that. I said, well, the policy wasn't made when you were hiring people from abroad.
So this is a fight. This is a battle for just, kind of, you're asking for more. You still want to take the 3 weeks. You just want to, spend time with family properly, and then come back and give you all come back. So you're at the forefront of what we now know as a flexible working.
Well, it wasn't flexible working as far as I was concerned, because in Trinidad, we got 4 weeks holiday together, and we didn't have the weather to deal with. We had sunshine. You take 4 weeks, you take 2 weeks, it didn't matter. And the staff was adjusted to suit. But here, I came to where they're saying you can only have 2 weeks at a time, and the manager has to approve the 3rd. And I'm saying, why is that? And the fact that they have invited us to come and work in this country and expect us to continue our family lives and feel comfortable, they did not cater for us wanting to go home.
Let me ask you just to back up a second. You said a key word there. There's in all of this discussions, the word is there, invite. You were invited.
Yes.
Right. And,
yes.
And that's a difference. It wasn't just like you were kind of breaking or fleeing. So it doesn't mean it's better or worse. It just means you've got different expectations, as you said.
Yes.
Right.
Because remember, what people aren't aware of, when nurses come here, agencies go into our country and recruit us to come and work in this country. That is what is done. So you come with an expectation that things are set up for you to work as you worked at home. And that is not what happens.
I'm going to move to, because you're the middle part of your career before we get to your final career. And we will, like I say, we will cover this once more again. But it's whilst we've got you on, and thank you for supporting us here at UWE and here within the community and supporting me personally once more. I wanted the middle part of your career in terms of moving into administration. So again, you would have seen too many people who look like you. Getting into those positions. How did you manage to kind of achieve and certainly going from your care and service into picking up the pen into administrative roles before you got to Bristol Black Carers?
Well, the thing is, when I started working at my last hospital, the manager said to me, "Oh, there aren't many posts that you could move up to in this organization." I said, "Fair enough, but I didn't ask you for that. I just came to start working." And the year after I started there, someone left. So there was a vacancy and I applied and I got it. The following year, they wanted a teaching sister. I love teaching. Nobody else wanted it and I took it. And that's how it happened. I used every opportunity to maneuver my way out of what they thought I should be boxed into.
And the role was what? What was the role that you applied for and got?
I was a E grade, then I applied, I got the F grade. Then I applied for the teaching sisters post in the theatres.
Right.
And then I left there and went into the community as a sister level to work with the sickle cell and thalassemia patients.
Excellent. And again, as I say, I reiterate, we will cover this in great detail in a couple of in literally a month from tonight. But again, I want to just get your views on the leadership. There's so much we could talk to you about. But in terms of Bristol now, as you said, you came in 1999, and now that it's been over kind of 20 years or so, you've kind of been there, but firm member of the community. It seems like you've been there for forever as part of that building blocks that we've all done, because we've had to build this from nothing, because we didn't exist before, in great numbers in Bristol before the Windrush generation arrived, unlike say Liverpool or Cardiff would be another one. So what, in terms of when you meet the Barbara Detterings and the Roy Hathcotes of this world, what inspiration did you take from them in terms of moving there? We've talked about some of the things that you experienced and the difficulties, but what did you get from the community and to make you an inspiring leader yourself?
Well, to start with, the first 11 years, I did not know Barbara Dettering nor Roy Hackett. And that later on I found to be something that should not have happened, because coming to Bristol, having a Malcolm X Center, I thought I should have been able to get that information from there as a Black person. And I don't see that in Bristol. We have not celebrated all the people that has contributed to making change happen in Bristol, or have them in an archive, have them somewhere for me as a visitor at that time that I could go and learn about them. So it's not until I became the sickle cell and thalassemia coordinator and going out in the communities is when I started to meet them. And then when I transferred to Bristol Black Carers, that even brought me closer. And Barbara Dettering is one of our trustees.
Wow, I mean, 11 years, and it's interesting because our next a talk is in 2 weeks' time with the filmmaker Michael Jenkins, and we've reflected on this as against one of the many inspirations I've had with community members to kind of develop the project in terms of there's nothing that wasn't there, so we have to start making these videos, podcasts, pictures, memorabilia, start projects like that, like this one. There's a couple of others, Clear Lakes, Project Truth as well, Lawrence Who's Cargo, and many others. Where we have to start telling our own narrative, not waiting for a phone call from the BBC to make a 1 minute clip. Shall we speak? And obviously that's where you as students come in terms of assisting us to make great quality content, which is fantastic. But that's interesting. I didn't know that took a further 11 years. I'm going to allow a few questions, even though you're. But before then, just a little bit about Bristol Black Carers. It's again part of our, the need for that, and also that's also part of obviously the nursing community as people go into their elder and palliative care, and what your work is there, and a little bit about what that is, and any help that you need in terms of volunteers or perhaps making some of those producing videos. Over to you, Dolores.
Yes, we love to produce videos because I want our carers, our community, to tell their story their way and not the way that a researcher wants to know about it, because they have their fixed questions they want to answer. And I have learned from listening that you learn a lot more without asking a question. So that is one of the projects I would love to be part and parcel of, and I have asked Michael if we can do something with that, because when you sit and you talk to your elders, you hear a lot more rather than come with a script asking questions. Bristol Black Carers was under the gun in 2015, where I was working part-time as the manager, and the council wanted to shut us down. And I was told by a commissioner, I wouldn't leave your job to take on this charity. And I'm a lady of faith, and I knew that it needed to stay. And 5 years hence, Bristol Black Carers is still here. So they have not shut us down, and we are a force to be reckoned with, because my service users, the community, are answering the call and saying, this is what we would like, this is how it should be done. And we need to do more of that so that people know what our needs are, and not say we don't know what Black people like or we don't know this, but we need to let the world know we are here and what our preferences are. Unless we do that, we will always stay in a bubble.
Fuck on me, you are really going down memory lane. I can remember having that conversation with you in 2015 and saying that we can't let this happen in terms of Bristol Black Carers, because they were going to shut you down. And just to give a bit of context, we were in the grips of austerity, and it was felt that that was an organisation that had to go, and we had to really build up that community support to say no, this in fact you should be doing more and not less or nothing or non-existent. That's I don't want to blame any specific regime. It was just, as I said, the amount of cuts that were there, and part of that is that's what you have to do. You have to fight for every last thing and prove that need and prove that case. That's part of that leadership that you have shown us, and Dolores. I'm going to allow a couple of, before I get to Emmanuel up next, we're going to talk about global leadership. And being inspired from, we heard about Michelle and Barack, as well as African leaders as well, and people like Marcus Garvey, who worked in America from the Caribbean in terms of Black Star Liner and Jamaican origin that led to that certainly Africanist origins from Jamaica, but firmly a part of that African diaspora. Well, some questions in the chat, please, for Dolores, if you could. We'll take a couple of them before we have a 10-15 minute chat with Dr. E, as I know him as. Any questions in the chat, please? Whilst we're wait, what? Here we go. If you were going to offer one bit of advice to new nurses and Dolores, what would it be? And it comes from an ex-nurse who had a similar career to yours, and Dolores, as well, interestingly enough. If you were going to offer one bit of advice to new nurses, what would it be?
My advice to new nurses would be understand yourself so that when you're working with your patients, you can understand where they are coming from, and you don't just give service or deliver nursing care because it is a robotic exercise.
Great.
You will be putting passion and purpose into what you're doing. But you could only do it when you know yourself. And
do you get approached by new nurses because again, as a sister, you were at the forefront of implementing new techniques all the time. So do you get approached by new nurses for advice?
Yes, I do. And one of the main things that I say to new nurses, practice to write everything down. Because the fact remains, if you don't write it down, you wouldn't remember the details. And we were taught on by our legal team, what you have not written, you have not done. So anytime you have anything at work that you're worried about, go home and write it in your little notebook. When you complete your task at work, make sure and record it. Those are the things that will keep you safe and will keep your patients safe.
Excellent. And yeah, lots there about a great advice. The time capsule is definitely out. I know people are in lockdown, but clearly the Doctor Who or Back to the Future as people have been watching, including Matt Hallows from UE Creating, because he asks, if you could go back and give yourself a piece of advice, what would it be?
To be a bit more, I was a bit timid in the past. Nobody would believe that, but I chatted a lot. No one would believe that, but I was. And that was a, what must I say, a facade to not let people know that I was afraid. So if you speak out first, nobody will come and ask you a question. So that was my cover to be not being called upon. So I would go back and I would have been a bit more firm in some of the things that I did, but I wouldn't change most of the things that I have experienced. Because I made my decision to become a nurse when I was age 11, and I geared everything and ended nursing, and I never had another job until I took on Bristol Black Errors. So 41 years this year after entering the nursing profession.
So that's fantastic. And the first bits were, you know, get your retaliation first, spoken like a true Trini from the Caribs that we inhabited the land. And I'm going to take a kind of final question before I ask Emmanuel to kind of join us. Is that obviously it'd be remiss of me not to loss of across the whole world, not just here in the UK, and 500,000 we've just reached in the US as well. How are they coping with COVID in Trini? Obviously, the first time no carnival this year. One of the best occasions in the world, as far as I'm concerned. I went in 2001. How are they coping in Trinidad and throughout the Caribbean in terms of COVID and now moving to that the battle for vaccinations? Just would like a view on that as we've got you here today, because you straddle three continents, from your African roots, from the Caribbean through to us here in the UK and Europe?
Well, I've been keeping in contact with my family and friends, and as everything else, just like here, you have people who believe, the people who understand, and the people who just think it is a conspiracy. So again, they are battling with the same thing because my daughter gave me the news that someone is having a backyard party because they could have a carnival, and the police were on them in 24 hours within that time so that they could, break it up before it got any bigger. And everybody that I've spoken to at home have the intention to take the vaccine when it arrives, and it is coming soon for them, and they may have started some vaccination recently. But what I did like about the management for the government is that they isolated people who traveled and came to Trinidad before they send them, and they quarantined them in an old hospital called Cora. And the other good thing they did, when somebody was suspected of COVID, they didn't send them to the general hospital, so you didn't have outbreak among the general hospital. You had them going to a specific hospital to be managed, which I thought was really good, and was surprised that it wasn't done here, for a first world country. Because the thing is, if you suspect something, you shouldn't put it among where you know it isn't. You should put it by itself. And I thought, with the principles of barrier nursing, they would have made quarantine areas within the hospital and send the COVID patients or the suspected COVID patients to those areas rather than put them on the general ward and then move them after they tested. So there is where I was a bit confused about the management. So I liked my country for that.
Excellent. And it's interesting how watching. I'm a big cricket fan. West Indies is my team. I watched the India and England game early today while I was working, and seeing that they've got fans there. Countries like Bhutan and even Vietnam. So these so-called developing world countries. South Korea, another one, had the same COVID outbreak on the same day as the US, and got less per capita in terms of deaths. Do you think there's something to be learned? And this I'm going to bring in Emmanuel in after this, because this is their area expertise. Do you think there's something to be learned from so-called developing world countries compared to the first world countries, as you term them, how they've dealt with it? Because certainly in Europe and the US, we don't seem to have dealt with it as well as some of those countries I've just named.
I think there is a lot to be learned, but then because the word third world has been applied to those countries, the first world won't listen. Because again, look at how the Ebola was managed. They contained it, they quarantined, they did this, they did that, and they got it under control in that aspect. It didn't run rampage because they used the principle of isolation, which we learned as barrier nursing. You keep whatever it is contained within that area, and you restricted the people that were going in and out.
Absolutely. And Dolores, I'm going to thank you, because I want a few minutes before we close. 8, and that tees us up nicely. You can stay on the kind of conversation, because I want to bring in Emmanuel, because he has written papers and on that very notion about Ebola, and kind of predicted a pandemic long before it occurred. He should be working somewhere in a central government now as you speak, but we're delighted that he is at UWE Bristol. Welcome, Doctor. As I know him, Doctor, you will know him as Dr. Emmanuel Adewuki. Welcome, Emmanuel.
Thanks, Roger.
Great to have you on board. And thank you for filling in terms of our I'm going to say Marvin unfortunately couldn't be with us today, but he has promised to be with us in the future. Thank you so much, Dolores. But just on that, on leadership, because the leadership doesn't just spring in terms of what you're doing within the community. It also goes that global leadership, and that's what I want to speak to you about, and learning those key lessons. I've read your paper that was written well before COVID, and it talked about even down to vaccinations, about having community leadership, having people on the corner. And I saw that when I went to New Orleans, and that they needed community leaders post hurricane, and we haven't learned those lessons now in terms of vaccinations and all through. So before we get to the subject of how some of the Windrush Bristolians have inspired you, what about that global leadership that we kind of talk about? And let's stay within the realms of health, as we only got a few minutes, in terms of learning, as Dolores was saying, learning those key lessons from Ebola to COVID to now, and a few of your thoughts, please.
Thanks, Roger. I think it's a really good starting point. I think, just referring to the paper you talked about, I think what happened during the Ebola outbreak was I was traveling for work across different countries in Africa then, and one of the things that struck me was how several countries were managing from entry the pandemic. It was a pandemic because it went farther than with this smaller geographical location. But it struck me then, because even going from the airports to schools, to community spaces, to universities, to banks, every single space had preventive measures that they were taking. Because I traveled into Ghana, I traveled to Nigeria, I traveled to different countries then. And it struck me that there were interventions which were in place. And whenever I flew back into the UK, nothing was actually happening. And for me, it told me something, that somehow I think because there's this idea that the systems are effective, that the systems are working, that when you have a pandemic, the systems will handle the problem. But you find that when you have illnesses, diseases, infectious diseases, you need more than systems to make things work. You need communication, you need people to be aware, you need local community groups, you need religious centers. All of these different spaces need to work together to be able to actually manage what is an infectious disease. And that's something which I think we're starting to now see happen a bit more with COVID. But obviously in the last year, that was something which wasn't really happening as much, because it was a case of, we know the science, so we know the science of viruses, so we can just do the same things we've always done. Actually, there should have been a lot of learning from the Ebola outbreak and how it was managed in a host of different countries, especially across West Africa.
So that's what I mean by that global relevance. And I just wanted to as and Dolores had passed the baton on to us, to just bring in that area of expertise. So I wanted to talk to you about the kind of concept of leadership, but place that within the city of Bristol, and what you, like Dolores, you would have come late to the city and to the party via the northwest of Manchester and through the Midlands as well. So what is it when you came here and you saw some of these our older generation and our Windrush generation from Roy and Barbara and some of the Seven Saints that you meant? How did that kind of inspire you in terms of taking things forward, and as well as other community leaders like and Dolores and other leaders that you can name on? How did this give you the inspiration to move forward?
No, I think it was very important. And just before I actually move, Roger, you failed to add yourself to that list, because you're one of the first people that I met when I came to Bristol, and you've been an inspiring leader in the city yourself. Having moved across the UK, I think this was one of the first places I'd come to that seen people who were of Black origin, who were pushing things within communities, moving within communities, and also trying to actually get the next generation engaged in a lot of conversations. So you have the carnival, and you have people who are organizing the carnival, you have the Roy Hackett's, you have even people like Kevin, you have and Dolores. So all of these different individuals who are inspiring individuals made me actually realize that there was something good going on in Bristol. And I think it's also the element of defining what leadership actually is. Leadership doesn't necessarily mean people have a position of authority. It's someone actually taking charge of something, inspiring people, influencing people to make change. And I think in Bristol we do have quite a strong community. I've been here almost 8 years now, and it's amazing that I've been here this long, because one of the things that actually kept me here are the groups and the people who you can stand on the shoulder of, the giants that have actually been there and done a lot of work within the space, but also thinking beyond where we are now, thinking beyond this generation, thinking beyond this city, expanding that influence, expanding that growth, expanding the work that we're doing. And for me, that is very important. So how do we connect with other communities across the UK? How do we connect with our communities globally? How do we connect with countries which are in parts of the world that are struggling? All of these for me are very important. And you can see the connection with the global leaders. I think the mayor, one of the programs which is run by the mayor's office, by the global leaders. I think that for me is very key. How do we become better? We can only become better when we're learning from people from across different parts of the world, different ethnicities, different cultures, different backgrounds. That's the only way we can become the better version of ourselves. So for me, I think there's a really good thing happening here, but it's really inspiring to see people like Councillor Carole and Dolores, yourself, and a few other people who we've come across, like Roy being one of them as well.
I mean, you make some important points. It's something that, because I'm a London boy originally, but settled in the city, and I think there is that taken for granted, especially when you let's take Europe in terms of that global leadership. When you go to Europe and you don't have that sense of community, you don't have that sense of belonging, you don't have that sense of identity, and it's even more questioned. It's questioned anyway, obviously, in the growing up, being black and British, but. When you go to, say, France, even if you're in the Benelux and France, and all you are is French, you're not black British. You can forget being Guyanese. That's my country. You can get being a Trini. That's Andalores. You can forget being Jamaican. That's Carole's. Forget being Nigerian. That's yours. You're just French, and that just couldn't work for me. That would just be too restrictive. I can only embrace the country by finding out my own identity. What you're saying is that because you've been here for that 9 years, and it's helped to incubate and assist you in both your leadership and your work, because you're kind of held within the community of those inspiring stories.
Definitely, and I take the point you've made about the identity and the belonging within a space, and I think there are different lenses we can look at that. For me, it's very important that people from different community groups, different ethnic backgrounds, are able to find themselves and express themselves within a space, and that's something which sometimes I think we don't see enough of. And I think listening to Carole talk earlier, I think it was very important to be yourself in the space. I think that's something which is really, really key. Even when we're within education, for me, it's always important. If you don't belong in the space, the space is missing something from you. If you don't belong in a space, you can't give your best to the space. If you can't, and that applies to communities, that applies to countries. How can you give your best to a country that you don't feel that you belong to, or you belong fully yourself in? And I think for me, I found a bit of home in Bristol moving here. I think initially it was a case of this place is different, but now I kind of feel that you have lots of different people who have pushed the bar and really championed inclusion, and also fought and actually laid down, some people have laid down their lives for others to be able to stand in this space. And for me, that is very important, because it's the role models that you can see, the role models that the next generation can see as well. All of that for me is very important.
Excellent. I wanted to, just because you'd have had again, growing up in like Dolores in a different space and place. I wanted you to just for today, just to bring in that kind of global leadership, because you'd have had a different kind of, when we mention Mandela, or unfortunately most of these are male examples from the 50s and 60s, Mandela or John Comfru, as well, and these were the kind of the heroes that were across the African diaspora that we're still learning about as part of our African history. But you'd have seen black leaders in that have just been standard to you. I mean, can you speak to that kind of difference in terms of as growing up and having that all around you in a country of your birth in Nigeria, but then coming here and then we're embracing that from the cradle of civilization from Africa, and what that speaks to in terms of leadership?
Yeah, I think when and Dolores mentioned coming out here for work, and then you find everyone where you were previously was black and in leadership positions, and then you come over here and then you find it's a different situation. I think it was the same for me. You have major institutions, civil service, banks, government organizations, and everywhere you're surrounded by leaders of different types. You have inspiring individuals, you have innovators. So all of these were around me growing up. And so when you then come into a space and you feel, well, you find you're told every time, well, we don't really have leaders from black origin. We don't really have people from ethnic backgrounds, ethnic minority backgrounds who are leaders in this space. The first question you ask yourself is why? Because actually they're everywhere. And that's something which for me always pushed me to challenge, because I was not limited by the environment that I came into, because I already had the experience of seeing leaders around me. And even within, and I think when we think about leadership, I always, there's something I always talk about when I do stuff about leadership. Leadership doesn't start from an organization. Leadership starts from a home environment. I always say within your household, there's already a leader. There are leaders in the household. You learn from that. You learn from the streets you grow up on. You learn from the communities you grow up from. So there are leaders all around us. And I think it's redefining leadership so that people who are now coming out into a new generation are not stuck with a vision of leaders being those who are within official positions, because actually everyone can be a leader, everyone can influence, everyone can drive change. And it's how do we inspire a generation to see that we don't need to only be looking at the likes of the Kwame Nkrumahs and the Nelson Mandelas, that we can create new leaders. If you've been paying attention, you would have heard that the new president of the World Trade Organization is an African woman, Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala. That's something which, to many people in Africa, we celebrate that, but we know that there are many more of people like her, or even better than her, within the space. And I think it's really promoting that kind of message that you have global leaders from different minority and ethnic backgrounds everywhere, and it's how do we showcase that. And one of the things that I've been particularly keen about is how in my field, science, we don't see many, especially in the bioscience field, you don't see many people that look like myself in professorship positions and leadership positions. It's very rare, especially in this country. But when you go across the pond to the US, you find people who are assistant professors, associate professors, full-on professors, chairs of departments. When you go across Africa, you have established professors all over the place. When you go to the Caribbean, you find them everywhere. So how do we actually promote that message in this country as well, where young people who are going into education are not thinking, well, I need to leave the UK to be able to see myself represented in a position or as a scientist or someone who is doing something innovative. These are the kind of things that I believe that we still have some work to do, but actually the kind of message that we need to be promoting and sharing widely.
Excellent. We've only got a few minutes left, and unfortunately, but that's you've captured some of the things that I wanted, because obviously we're looking at the Windrush generation, but it doesn't begin and end then. We were taken there, so the story then comes from Africa, and that's why I've looked at that global leadership from Africa, and even people like CRL James from Aunt Dolores' country in Trinidad is a leader in their own right, and they owned president there in terms of Williams have been inspirations to me in my learning. So what I'm saying to you, especially students, is that this comes from what we can place it within Bristol, we can place it within Britain even, but this you understand that we're in a global connection as certainly people from the what we know as and terms as the African diaspora. There are terms from like Windrush Generation and the African diaspora, meaning the black connection through South America, my own country in Guyana, through the enslaved places in places like Colombia, Uruguay, and of course Brazil, then across the ocean to Africa, where we were taken from, across to the American states, across to Europe that I've touched upon, Dutch colonies, French colonies, Spain, of all, and there, and people migrating now and welcoming our Somali communities, all part of that African diaspora and Africanness as well. So I just want you just to kind of touch upon some of those things that give us that connection in terms of leadership. Emmanuel, final words from you, please. Are you still there? Okay, looks like we've You might have,
Sorry, I think I sort of muted myself a little bit there. And I was saying it's been great being part of this conversation. And I think when we spoke earlier, we talked about actually the different leaders that we've talked about over generations in Africa, and the message of those sort of individuals to the generations that obviously mine is. And I think it's continuing to push the message that we can continue to develop leaders across the pond, and we need to have connections as well between the different communities, because actually that is the only way we can have learning. If people in this country who are growing up in this country or white British get to learn any leaders across the pond, across different countries, then you find that there won't be some of the misconceptions and the biases that we see within working environments and in schools will be reduced. But actually, if people are not exposed to things, they have a misconception of the way the world looks. And I think there is a lot we need to do about educating people here, but also educating people across different parts of the world.
Thank you so much. Please stay on, because we did start at 6:05. So you guys owe me a few minutes, or 4 minutes. Just in terms of any questions from the audience, anybody taken anything today that they want to ask a little bit more about and perhaps develop a piece of work? Chanel, great to see you again. Wonder if you've got another poem for us, or perhaps enlighten us with another poem. I'll leave you to enlighten that again. I'll find a few questions. I'll close at 6:05, as we did start at 6:05 for my. I don't get paid overtime, but I want my full 2 hours from you all. I've really enjoyed today. Put something in the chat or open up your mic. Anybody? Looks like we've got lots of thank yous. Chanel's still working on it. So exploring. That's fine. I don't want that. That's the point. I'm as well as Mian, as well as Alicia. We're just setting the table, and how you guys choose to tuck in. You might want to listen. You might want to do a piece of work or get in contact with us. It's totally, guys, up to you. I'll find a few questions. Again, Matt, thank you for some excellent questions tonight. Thank you, Elizabeth, as well. I'm going to make this the final question then, to take us up to 6:05. Manuel, this one's for you. Does anyone have any opinions on the importance of community consultation in decolonizing archives, please?
I can come in quickly on that. I think it's very important to work with community organizations. I think one of the things within social sciences that people have done over time is working with local groups, and also visiting the sort of older population within communities, because that is where your history, a lot of your history, the remaining history is. So you have projects which are going on about, even in the sciences, about herbs, for example. Traditional herbs in terms of treatments. That's something which I know a lot of organizations have done and scientists have done. But I think when it comes to the conversation of decolonizing archives, definitely you need community consultation. But it has to be honest consultation, honest and meaningful consultation, not tokenistic consultation.
Thank you. And Dolores has got a poem. Fantastic. Another one to add to the archive. We had one last time. I'm loving this project so much. Tom wanted to ask a question, please.
Yes. Hi, Emmanuel. I hope you're well. I had a question that might kind of make more sense in a UE context, but it's about leadership.
Okay.
We talk a lot about authentic leadership at UE. And sometimes when I thought about it, authentic kind of opened a big space for a more diverse kind of leadership. And more latterly, I've been thinking that authenticity is a bit of a luxury for people who are kind of secure in the position they're in enough to be authentic. Do you have any thoughts about authenticity, or the kind of adjective you give leadership that you're most comfortable with?
Tom, that's a fabulous question. Very tough question as well. I'm a strong believer in authentic leadership. It is very difficult for me as a person to follow someone as a leader who I don't think is authentic. That is just my personal approach, because if I'm going to put myself on the line to enable an organization or enable a department or enable a service, I have to believe that the person who is leading that conversation has the right, is authentic in their approach, because if they're authentic in their approach, they'll be honest with us or myself, like the team, about what our vision is. They'll be clear about things, and they'll be obviously the sort of leaders that might be also consultative or democratic in their approach. So I believe very strongly in authentic leadership. It is difficult when, especially in the point you made in terms of when people are established in their positions, then you feel, but even then authenticity doesn't really come out. Sometimes it's not really authentic, even at the most senior levels. So authentic leadership for me is one thing I would encourage of anybody who is aspiring to be a leader. Be yourself, regardless. If the space doesn't actually enable you to be a leader in the space, another space will take you gladly as a leader in that space. But don't lose yourself in the process trying to be a leader. That's one thing I would always put forward.
Can I add something to that?
Excellent answer, thank you.
Yeah.
And I want to just go to my excellent co-leads for their support, and thank you in terms of Alicia Airy and Mian. And Mian, you've got an event. Do you want to talk about that, and do you want me to read it? So she's got an event with Vanley Burke, who is documenting Black Lives Matter. He is 75, one of our fervent Windrush Generations. We look forward to supporting that, and he's come to the School of Art and Design as well. So make sure you all come to the talk. Is it free? That's the question, man. Is it freeness? We want to have freeness, you know. You all answer that in the chat, and thank you for the excellent questions. Freeness! Yeah, we love it. That's what we want. So yeah, I knew it was free. I just wanted to get my co-leads to kind of say one or two words. I want to be staging the line there. So thank you to them, especially for that tech support once more. Had some brilliant support last time, and once again from Tom Buckley and all that team. It's gone so well. Thank you to you as for taking your time this evening as part of that, and all of our supporters and community members. And thanks to my speakers today, Councillor Carole Johnson and Dolores Chacon, who you will see again in exactly 1 month from today. She'll be doing further on the medical and nursing services, talking about her experience. We're hoping from a big contingent from the medical team as well. And of course, Dr. E. Emmanuel Adewuki. Thank you, everybody as well. And our final words will be from Dolores. Can you give us that poem, please?
Yes, I can. And it's called Celebrate. Celebrate the joy that you are alive. Celebrate that you can share a part of your life with a friend. Celebrate the greatest gift of all, love that surrounds you each day. Celebrate that you can share your love and feelings. Come together with all to celebrate being you. Unique as you are, live each day as a celebration. Thank you.
Wonderful. We're going to include that as part of the project as well. And what we haven't said is that you're a poet as well. And so we've got two thus far. And we've got Chanel and Dolores to put in there. We've got films in there. We've got some blogs. We've got passages in there. So that's been fantastic. Thank you so much, University of West of England, Bristol. It was an idea that's born from the community and came from the community, just channeled through the three of us in terms of getting it all together. It's been fantastic. Anybody got any final words that they want to say or add before I close and say good night to everybody?
Can I say something, Roger?
Sure.
Yeah. Just on the back of what the doctor was saying about authentic leadership. You know, the thing is, if you be an authentic person, when you come into leadership, you will be an authentic leader. So that's what my advice would be to individuals. It's been absolutely great being part of this conversation tonight, and whatever the obstacles that you might face, you can still succeed, especially you know, if you stick together. The Windrush generation have proved that to us. And a quote I'd like to leave us with is, our greatest glory is not in never falling, but in rising every time we fall. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, and that's again, thanks for your time. Well, it was supposed to be one thing before, but I've just really enjoyed tonight. I want to thank everybody else. Unless anybody's got anything further to say, I will take your silence as a no. I want to thank everybody on behalf of the team. On behalf of my team, Izzy and Millie and Ben as well, Mian and Alicia as part of my co-leads, Limbala, Mara Harris, and everybody that has, and especially Tom as our IT specialist as well, once again saving us from an abyss of non-connection. We thank you, and again, thank you all for tuning in. It will be available on YouTube. We'll post those links in between. Our next talk will be on the 10th, in 2 weeks' time. On the 10th of March, it would be Michael Jenkins. We're looking at film and the Windrush generation, and also talking about that and community, and some of those themes we've already touched upon about how to have memories. What's known as memoryscape. How do we kind of keep that within our communities, and how because he's further down the chain. He's not the younger. He's like third and fourth generation. His kids are growing up now, and he wants something to pass on to them. So how do we keep those legacies? And Dolores will be returning on the 24th. As well, we're looking at nursing and medical, go into a lot more detail about that. And we have Latoya McAllister Jones, the director of St. Paul's Carnival, on the 17th. So we've got 3 in 3 weeks, and at some point we'll get I'm assured we'll get the mayor popping in. I'm sorry, apologies that he couldn't make it today, but actually, although I was panicking at 5 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, it's been wonderful talking to Anne Dolores, Emmanuel, and Councillor Carole Johnson. Thank you all, and good night from all of us.